On the other end of our line, the Republican state senator from here in Michigan. She is the former Michigan Secretary of State. She serves the 14th District right now. It is none other than Ruth Johnson joining us on the other end of the line to talk about a whole lot of issues. And, yes, we will get into how we can clean up the election, too. State Senator Ruth Johnson, good morning. It's so good to have you on and hear your voice again.
It's always good to be on with you, Frank.
I first want to ask you about something I understand is going on this morning involving the State Capitol Commission, if I may. They're having a meeting, I am told, to consider a ban on open carry in the Michigan State Capitol. What can you tell us about it?
Yes, that's a separate group from the legislature, and they do look at all the rules for the Capitol. And as I understand it, they will be discussing that this morning, having open carry in the Capitol, whether that's something acceptable or not. We did have people that did have AR-15s that were loaded with Kevlar vests up in the balcony with their fingers on the trigger. So there has been some concern, and some of those people ended up being involved in wanting to take all of us as hostages and also hurt the governor. So there has been some concern.
All right, Ruth Johnson, the state senator from Holly, here on the other end of our line, and we're going to see these concerns play out in the legislature here in the coming new session. This meeting today of the Capitol Commission to consider banning open carry. Are we one of the few states that allow open carry within a government facility like that?
I know we're very unusual in that when I was the county clerk, register of deeds, and county commissioner, none of that was allowed at all. And we do have security systems like that in almost all of our government buildings. The Capitol is unusual that way.
Mm-hmm. Also, for most people here in the state of Michigan, they're not worried about whether they're going to carry a weapon to the state capitol or not. But what they do want to know is whether this COVID vaccine is going to be available and the way it's being distributed in our state right now. What are your thoughts, Senator Johnson, about the way the governor has overseen the distribution? Is it getting out quickly enough? Is it being administered fairly to people?
Well, as of January 7th, we were ranked 39th in the country for administering vaccines. I would say that's a failing grade, knowing that it impacts our quality of life, our lives, and our livelihoods. And what I am very concerned about was that the governor was pointed out as being very poor at getting this done in her administration. So, always the blame game and making excuses. But unfortunately, she blamed our health departments, and our health departments simply have not gotten those vaccines from the state of Michigan. We had 725,000 doses, and less than 175,000 have been administered. And I'd just like to tell you, after spending hours on the phone trying to get through to 2 counties and 1 hospital, is she simply hasn't got them the vaccine. So please, the county health departments are deluged with calls when she said 65 and older. The problem is she simply hasn't supplied those vaccines to those health departments. Well,
exactly. Those 65 and older are eligible to begin receiving the vaccine today, as I understand it, right?
Well, yes, but no. Water everywhere, but no vaccine to be found. The state hasn't gotten it where they need to. It was a deflection. When Michigan came up as one of the worst states for getting the vaccine out, the deflection was they said, okay, 65 and older. But the problem is it doesn't exist. It's not there. It deflected it or blamed it on our local health departments, who have been just deluged. It takes forever to get through, only to find out they absolutely don't have the vaccine because the state hasn't gotten it to them. It's really unfair to those health departments, and it's very unfair to many of us that would like to get the vaccine and look forward to it so that we can resume at least a semi-normal life. You look at all these people. I have a 97-year-old that his families worked so hard to get him this vaccine because you hear on the radio that the governor says, okay, we're ready to go, but we're not. And that's a big problem because how this has impacted people's lives, livelihoods. For many people, I have 3 people that I was very close friends with that have passed away from this. There's just really no excuse for not having that vaccine to those health departments and then say, okay, 65 and older, you guys are good. We're not good. It doesn't exist. And all it does is put more pressure on our health departments to try to sort through these calls. And when they tell people they're not happy, and it can take an hour or two to even get through to your counties only to find out that it was simply a deflection. And I think what we need right now is leadership. Right now you need people to take responsibility and then do whatever they need to do to fix it ASAP. Don't say one thing just to deflect and buy some more time. We need it. We deserve it. And people are just losing. I mean, the businesses going out of business is just remarkable to me. And if we did have the vaccine and it was dispersed and we weren't one of the worst states in the nation, we can get back to normal much quicker.
Mm-hmm. Senator Ruth Johnson with us from Lansing. She is from Holly, Michigan, and represents Michigan's 14th district. She's also the former Secretary of State. Senator Johnson, if I may, I'm going to ask you to stay on because I've got to ask you some questions about the way we're running elections here in Michigan and tap into your expertise in that area. Could you stay with us through the break real quickly?
I would be very happy to.
We'd be delighted to have you stay. Thank you so very much. Senator Ruth Johnson, we've got a great staff that makes this program possible for all of you out there, and our phone number is always 800-859-0957. The man answering the phones at our station is Cameron Knox. Danielle Mason is our engineer. Chris Renwick, our executive producer, and he was hosting last week while I took vacation. Chris, thank you for that. Good job, and we thank you so very, very much. Dana Clark watching traffic and weather for us. And all of you, my listeners, 800-859-0957. So good to have you with us. I mentioned earlier briefly that today is the day that Beaumont Hospital is beginning to distribute vaccines, the COVID vaccine, to those 65 and older. But they've also put out a message to people who want to come to Beaumont for this that, number one, you must have a, quote, My Beaumont chart. That's something you sign up for online. You must have one of those accounts to schedule a COVID-19 vaccine administration. And as soon as you're able to schedule that vaccination, you'll get an email from them that are going out starting today. It's the only way to schedule an appointment at Beaumont, okay? They're scheduled at the Beaumont Service Center in Southfield, the vaccinations are, and that is the only location available. So if you're thinking about walking in for vaccination, forget it. There's no walk-in appointment available for anybody, okay? So there you go. You've got to go to My Beaumont chart, create a chart for yourself, and then you could make an appointment to get that at Beaumont. Every hospital has got its own ideas on how to handle that. Let's go back to our state senator Ruth Johnson from Holly, who's kind enough to stay with us here through the second portion of the show. She is the former Secretary of State. As you know, here in the state of Michigan, there's still controversy over the election, and personally, Senator Johnson, I don't think the controversy is going to go away, and people will be acceptant of all the results until we can reassure them in some way that yes, their vote meant as much as anybody else's. I don't know how we go about that, though, to assure everybody there was a clean election. I've got the feeling in this day and age we just might have these kind of disputes from this day going forward. How about you?
Well, I hope not, but I do think we have to take some very strong measures in the legislature, and the governor has to support them. And first off, we do need an independent, nonpartisan audit of some of the problems that have been reported to my office that we feel has credibility. And the current Secretary of State, without legislative approval, sent out absentee ballot requests, or I call them invitations to vote, that were already filled out to over 800,000 people that are not qualified voters. Worse yet, then she told the clerks not to verify them, even though we have credible information from other states that they have surrendered their driver's license and moved to the other state. We also had people that were dead that were sent them, non-citizens and underage. That list, the qualified voter file, is not an accurate list to use to send out invitations to vote. Less than half the country participates in sharing information. It was never meant for that. I cleaned 1 out of 6 people off because most of them were dead. I did a subscription with the Social Security Administration, but since we don't communicate with half the country, over half the population, we don't know if people are voting in 2 states or not. You certainly should never invite them to vote. That was the local clerk's job, and 2 court decisions said don't send them unless they've asked for them. Our Secretary of State did that anyway, and that's what makes people think how can this be happening? It gives them that pause, or it makes them think there's not integrity in the system. That needs to be fixed. And also, she changed the absentee ballot application, which is not personally signed by the voter anymore, as required by law. And she, and as I said, she instructed those absentee ballots that came in that were flagged in the qualified voter file to subsection that says that they've moved. We have to keep them on for 2 federal elections. First of all, she didn't purge or clean them like she was supposed to from the other states that sent us that information, the ones that do. And then she told the clerks not to verify them. Usually you call up and say, hey, Frank, it says here you got a Florida license. Can you tell me, are you registered there? Do you live there? No longer are they supposed to verify. So you invite people, and then you tell the 1,520 clerks that conduct the elections simply not to verify them. And that's just wrong, and that's what gives people concerns. We have to make sure we have integrity in our elections so everyone's treated fairly, everybody's votes count, and we don't have people voting that shouldn't be, that are disenfranchising a good voter here. And I think that is going to be central to bringing our country together, bringing our state together, is to make sure that we have integrity in our elections. And I will try to work on that as hard as I can this year, but I do think we will need to have an audit done by a nonpartisan group that just says, could this have happened, and does it impact, or could it impact integrity in our elections? And I have to say, yes, I mean, we have reports that are credible of people being walked into the booths and being told how to vote or being intimidated to vote a certain way. And we had insufficient Republican election inspectors that were allowed in some places. All these things, I think, create this distrust, and for good reason. Having said that, with all the irregularities and things that were done, there are not enough votes in Michigan to change the outcome of this election. But we better have the will to fix it, because there's likely to be another very close race. I had races when I was county clerk that they tied, and we had to have people pick win or lose out of a box, or other places flipped a coin. So every vote is important, and we want to encourage people to vote. When I was Secretary of State, we were named #1 in the country for getting eligible people registered to vote, and then always encourage people to vote, but eligible voters, and only once.
Yeah, exactly. You know, the other thing that strikes me, though, a lot of these controversies are arising in states that have Democrats in charge of the election system as secretaries of state, or whatever their title may be in their respective states. And I just wonder whether the Democrats have figured out a way to better reach their own base of voters with ballots, legitimate ballots, to increase voter turnout among their supporters, which some people would say is very legal and a smart way to do business.
I think you're right on both accounts, and I don't know of anybody that has a problem with reaching out and encouraging eligible people to vote. But we're talking about, really, I think, abuse of the system. That's where the problems are. I've always encouraged people to vote every place, and we always had, on my team, we had like 10 people that would meet every Monday. 2 were card-carrying Democrats, because we wanted to be fair. We wanted to reach out. This is a little bit different. I'm not sure if it's right or wrong, but my daughter's 21. She got an extra card to make sure that she would vote from the state of Michigan. I'm not 21. I just had a birthday yesterday, and I didn't get that same card. And I just think everybody from the Secretary of State's office has to be treated the same. There's all kinds of outreach going on, and hats off to the Democrats that had pulled a much higher turnout. Having said that, only half the people voted in Detroit that are eligible voters.
Well, exactly, and that's something that they will try to correct moving forward. And just remind those people they all have that right and obligation to cast their ballots. And as for not being 21, Ruth Johnson, when you reach that birthday, I toast you on behalf of everybody in the listening audience. Okay?
Yes, and I do think it's important for everyone first to understand what's on the ballot. That's most of the work, and then take time to vote. But we do have to have a system that we can ensure people that there was integrity in it, and that's something I do not believe we have anymore. I think COVID was a big problem, but I think COVID was an excuse to do some things that really did strip away the integrity. It didn't change the outcome in Michigan, but we have another election coming up in a year and a half, right? So we have to get busy.
Well, that's exactly right. And the Secretary of State will be on the ballot, as will the Attorney General and the Governor. So we're expecting them to run for re-election. We thank you for joining us, Ruth Johnson. Always a pleasure to have you on and to tap your expertise. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Frank. Have a great day.
You too. Take care. Ruth Johnson.